Hi, this is Kathy with City Farmhouse Studio. Today I want to talk to you about the Winter in the City knit sweater. It is our long sleeve version of Summer in the City. Has a great little detail at the bottom edge, and for the Winter in the City it has a nice same detail on the cuff of the sleeves. The pattern link can be found in the description below. So for this pattern I did use the Premier Wool Select yarn. It is a 75% acrylic, 25% wool, 273 yards, 250 meters, 3.5 ounces to 100 grams. It is a category 3 light. Now for the sweater on the bottom edges, I did have to steam to get those edges to really lay it flat and not want to curl up. I do know some people do not like steaming their acrylic. So if that is the case, the yarn that I used for the Summer in the City is the Bernat Softy Baby Cotton. It is the same gauge and weight of the Wool Select. The patterns are the same gauge between the two. And this one is a 60% cotton, 40% acrylic. I have really liked how this yarn has lasted over the season that I've worn the Summer in the City. So two options. Since it is a winter sweater, the Wool Select is what the pattern recommends. For the pattern, you will need US size 7 knitting needles. That's 4.5 millimeters. And to begin, you're going to start with a long tail cast on, but you're going to use a double length of yarn, a double wrap, and that gives a nice heavy cord underneath. There's two ways of doing this. One is to add a separate string of yarn and hold two together for that cast on. The other is to measure the width of your sweater about 3 times, and that will be, give a little bit of an extra, and that's going to be our cast on double. So about where they join, I will make one single slip knot in the long tail, and then holding with the tail over my thumb, the rest going down. Through the thumb, through the finger. Just like a long tail cast on, but it's using that double strand for that bottom edge to give it a nice weight. You do this for your number of cast on stitches. And you can see that these strands are starting to twist together. I actually like the look of those on the bottom being twisted. It really gives it a nice kind of corded edge. Okay, then once you get your cast on edge with the number of stitches you need for your size, you will go down to the bottom of the pattern to look at the chart for reference if you need be. But the first row is every row for the patterning. You knit your first stitch, then you're going to yarn over and knit 2 together. Yarn over, knit 2 together. So that was the end of the row. I had my last yarn over, knit 2 together, and then I'll just knit the last stitch. And then we'll turn and be ready for the purl side. In this row, you just purl every stitch, all those that were the knit together stitches, and then the yarn overs, you'll give a purl in each of those as well. So after that row, you can really start to see the bottom edging and then the eyelets, every other stitch that we've made. And then this next row is where we really start the pattern of the motifs coming together. So for the first stitch, again, of the first beginning side and the end stitch, again, we will always just be knitting. And then we go into our pattern. So we're going to be yarning over, knitting 2 stitches, and then we're going to center double decrease. So we're going to go into these 2 stitches, the next 2 stitches, as if we're going to knit them together, slide them onto the right needle, and the next stitch go into that, slide it over. Now we're going to knit all 3 of those stitches without splitting them. One. So there you can see where that center stitch is laying in the front. Then we're going to knit 2, yarn over, and knit 1. And then we're going to repeat that. So we yarn over, knit 2, we're to our center double decrease. So slip the 2 stitches as if to knit them together, slip the 3rd one over. Now we're going to knit all 3 of those together. Knit 2, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 2, we're at the center double decrease, the hardest part of this is not splitting the yarn. Knit 2, yarn over, knit 1, that's the end of the repeat, and then we have our last stitch we will knit, and then the next row we purl. So now we're ready for our next row. In this, we're moving the stitches that we yarn over and center double decrease in 1 more, so the eyelets continue moving towards that center double decrease. So it's the same steps, just how we knitted, yarned over, knit 2, center double decrease. Those numbers are what changes. So again, we're going to knit that first stitch of the row. That will be our selvage edge. This time we're going to knit the first stitch of the repeat, yarn over, knit 1. Now do the center double decrease. So slip, slip, knit those together. Knit 1, yarn over, knit 1 for the center, 1 for the column that separates all of these. Now we're into the next repeat. So we're going to knit that first one, yarn over. So we've knit the first one, yarn over, knit 1, center double decrease. So I'm slipping 2, slip that next one, knit those together, knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, knit the column that separates between them all. So now we're back to the repeat. And then we have that last of the pattern repeat, single knit, and then we have our selvage edge that we knit. So there you can really start to see how everything starts pulling together, getting the scalloped edge. This row we're going to purl. So now we're ready for the last row of our pattern repeat. So we'll knit the first stitch, and then we're going to knit 2, wrap our needle, now do our decrease, wrap our needle, knit the 2, knit the 1 for our center division column, knit 2, wrap, center double decrease, wrap, knit 2, the last one of the pattern repeat, and our end stitch. And there you go. Okay, so once you get a certain amount of inches knit above the little motifs, the pattern's going to tell you to mark the edges so that you know where your sleeves are going to be joined. So all I do is I take a little removable marker and I'm just going to clip them in between there. And there. And now on the front and the back, whenever I seam the shoulders together, I know I need to set my sleeve from there to the other one and just seam it all straight together, and no more counting on my behalf. Then once you finish this, you will get another set of instructions to knit another set of inches, and that's going to get us to where we'll do our neckline shaping. So I'm just going to pretend we've already done that. You have another chunk. So in the instructions, it will tell you to knit the first number of stitches, and this is we'll be working 1/2 of the garment at a time. And it does tell you to end your inches after a wrong side row. So that's where I'm at. I'm beginning, the right side of the fabric is facing me. I'm ready to do a right side row. All right, so now once we have this side of the shoulder worked, I need to wrap this stitch so that I don't start to create a hole as we continue working. So with this next stitch, I'm going to slip it purlwise, bring my yarn in front, and slip it back, and then turn my work, and then purl back across. Now on the front side, you can see very clearly on the back side where I've wrapped around that stitch. So that is the one that I know is more part of this group not being worked. So the next set of instructions will tell you to knit so many more stitches, or it'll tell you to leave so many left unworked. So this next section, I want to leave 2 more sets unworked, 2 more stitches left unworked. So I need to knit till I get to that point. So here I can very easily see that's my wrapped stitch. I'm going to leave 2 unworked. Again, I'm going to slip one as purl, move my yarn forward, slip it back, and turn around. Now I'm ready to purl this row. So there's my original decrease, my 2, where I stopped knitting. Here's the next 2 stitches. And then you'll repeat that for a certain number of repeats, and then it'll tell you to just leave one more unworked. So we'll knit the row. And then I'm going to leave this stitch left unworked. So I'm going to pass it, transfer it back. So on this row, I will knit all the way across, stopping at that first stitch I come to that's been wrapped. And once you finish those straight sections, you're going to want to bind off, but only those last stitches you worked, not those that have been wrapped. I'm going to knit 2, pass that first stitch over, knit 1, pass that stitch over, knit 1, and there I've come to a wrapped stitch. So I'm going to stop there and I'm going to go ahead and bind off so that we can then work on this side of the shoulder. Okay, so now we want to start to work on this edge of the sweater. So I need to transfer all of my stitches back over onto my other needle. All right. Now we want to do the exact same thing we did on this half, but instead of doing knit-wise, we're going to do it purl. So I'm going to go ahead and purl those stitches that it tells me I need to make at the beginning. Okay. Now I want to knit, slip that next stitch knitwise, bring my yarn in front, slip it back, turn my work, and knit back across. So nothing really too complicated. The hardest part is reading your stitches to know where to start and stop. Now we're back to where we stopped 2 stitches before the last bind off, or the wrapped stitch, excuse me. So here I can see the stitch with the wrap, and then I'm leaving 2 stitches left unworked. I want to slip that first one knitwise, pull the yarn forward, slip it backwards, and then I will knit the row. So you repeat that 2s, and then we'll go to leaving 1 left unworked. So again, you can see my wrapped stitch. Slip the next one knitwise, place it back, turn, knit across, and then I'm to where, after you've finished those repeats, you are to where you just do straight rows of stockinette, leaving those stitches that are wrapped untouched, let them be, and then you'll bind off this shoulder. So once you have your shoulders bound off on both sides, it's time to go ahead and work this neckline edge. We want to have the front side facing the right side, and we're going to start on this edge of our shoulder, and we want to pick up so many stitches along this little bit of edge where you did just straight rows. So with that spot on my needle, I'm going to pick up 1 stitch, and then evenly, based on your size, however many you need to pick up, going down. And I'm just going to do 2. Now I need to pick up this lifted stitch and I want to knit those two together. So I'm going in between my stitch, pulling a stitch through, and then I can slide my other stitch off. And I'm going to go through and do that to all those wrap stitches. Now I'm back to the other edge, and I'm going to want to pick up 2 additional stitches, or however many for your size. The instruction says for you. And then we're going to turn our work. So now you're on a purl row, and I want to work 2 rows of reverse stockinette. So where I'm on the right, where I'm at the wrong side facing me, where I normally would purl, here I want to knit. So I'll knit this row. Now with the front of the work facing me, I want to do my final row of reverse stockinette. So this will be purl. And then once that row is complete, I will bind off. Once you bind off your neckline, you have a nice finished edge to your neck. Your sleeve markings are marked. And then you'll repeat this from the bottom up to marking the sleeves, all the way up, way further. And then you'll only knit one section, wrap one yarn, and go back and forth for the back shoulder edge. And then you'll bind that side off, and then work your other side and work your neck just in a similar fashion. And now you're ready to move on to your sleeves. Now the sleeve is worked very much like your beginning front and back bands. You begin with the same cast on and the motifs just as before. Now you're going to knit a set portion of stockinette so that you get up to the height to then begin your increases. So let me get there and I'll show you what to do. And now we're going to start increasing to get up to your final sleeve width. I've not specified what you should do because based on your size, depending on how many rows you knit after you've finished the pattern repeats, you may be on a purl side, you may be on a knit side. Also, depending on your size, depending on how many rows in between each of the increases, you may be alternating between increasing on knits and increasing on purls. So it's very easy to understand once you know what stitches you need to do, and then just count the rows in between. So for increasing when you're on the knit side, you will always knit your first stitch, then the stitch that is below the next stitch on your needle. So the stitch that one was made into. You're going to lift that up, put that on your needle, work one stitch into that, and then one into the original stitch. And that is a right leaning increase. So that was one stitch increased. Now we'll go ahead and go all the way down so that we can do the increased on the other edge of the sleeve. Okay, so I've worked till there are 2 stitches remaining on my needle. And it's in between these 2 that I want my left leaning increase to be. So how we picked up this side of the loop that stitch is worked into for a right leaning, we need to pick up this other side. But first we need to knit that stitch to get it away from us so that we can then move on to in between where we want it. And we're not going to pick up the one we just slid off, which is right there. We need to go what that one was made into, which is down. So we have the stitch we just made, the stitch it was made into, and the stitch below it. And that stitch below is where we want to make our increase. And then we knit our final stitch. And that is how you increase on both sides of your sleeve for the knit side. If you were on a knit side, you would then knit however, or in stockinette, so purl knit, however many rows you need to your next increase. Now, let's say you were on the purl side and you needed to increase. That, again, you purl just your first stitch. I'm going to, just as we did on the knit, where we lifted that first bump below, I'm going to lift that, purl into it, and purl the original stitch, and then purl across so I can increase on the other side. Okay, so I've purled all the way to the end of the row, and just like on the knit side, we want the increase between these two stitches, and we want it in that loop. So we need to purl, move that over, I'm going to lift the stitch that was below all of that, purl into it, so I have an increase of 1, and then purl my last stitch. So that is all the stitches you need to know for the Winter in the City sweater. I hope you've enjoyed this pattern as much as I have. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss out on any other great patterns from City Farmhouse Studio. Thanks again. Bye.